Okay, you're going to need your math notebook. Okay, and we're going to do this first story problem together. Now, I put on here to use your fraction circles to help you, but you can always draw a picture too. Okay, this one might take you a little bit, so let's think about it. 10 preschoolers shared 2 liters of fruit juice equally during morning snack. So how much juice did each student get? Okay, go ahead and pause the video, record this in your notebook, and be ready to tell me, or if I was there, tell me, how much juice did each student get? Okay, some things that you could have done. The first thing is we know that our whole is 2 liters, or I'm right, 2 liters, because we've got 1 liter and 2 liters. So I've divided up, I've got 2 whole liters. And they're divided up in tenths. And here are my little preschoolers over here, okay? And so we're going to give each of them, oops, I forgot to hide those blue circles. We're going to give each of them 1/10 of the juice. Now remember, I know it says juice, but we're going to divide up into pizzas because it just makes more sense when we think about it like pizzas, right? So each preschooler is going to get a slice and then another one, right? And I can keep doing this until every one of the preschoolers has their own share of juice. Okay, that was the first liter. Now we need to do it for the second liter. It's going to look the same, right? So how much did each preschooler get? Well, here's the circles where they come into play. If we're going to take this little guy here, and we're going to say on both liters he got this much. Well, he is 1 out of 10, right? So he has 1/10 of this liter, 1/10 of that liter. And so when you count those together, that's a total of 2/10, right? Okay, another way you may have done it is divide them equally into 5 parts. Now, why 5 parts? Well, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 would equal 10 parts, right? Okay, so same thing. We've got our little preschoolers here. We're going to divide them equally. So there's the first liter and the second liter, right? And we want to know how much did they get? Well, if we could look at this little girl, she got 1/5 of this first liter. Whoops. And she would have gotten 1/5 over here, right? So the answer for that would have been 2/5. 1/5 and 1/5 would have been 2/5. I'm not sure where my circle and arrow went for that one, but 2/5. Okay, so that's another way you could have shown that. Okay, so here's my question. How are 2/10 of a liter and 1/5 of a liter equivalent? Let me think. Just think about that. How are those equivalent? Okay. Well, we have 2/10 here, right? And we have 1/5 here. If we look at the section that's colored in for this 1/5 and this 2/10 here, okay, then they are covering the same amount. So my answer for that is that the same amount of each circle is shaded, so they are equivalent. Or maybe you did that fraction rule that we talked about, right? The fraction rule, here we're going to start with our 1/5 fraction, and we're going to make it equal to this 2/10. Now I'm starting with a smaller number here, so I'm going to, because I know I'm going to be multiplying my numerator and my denominator by the same number. So if I know that 5 times 2 is going to equal 10, that gives me my number that I will multiply, right? So 1 times 2 is 2, 5 times 2 is 10, and therefore 1/5 is the same thing or equivalent to 2/10. All right. Today, we are going to talk about comparing decimals to the tenths place. And don't worry if you're thinking decimals, we've never even talked about decimals. what we're going to today. So it'll all make sense, but that's the plan for our math lesson today. All right, so let's discuss this. Let's see. And I was going to take, let's see, I wanted you to take out a red fraction circle. And it did have, it was supposed to be red here. So you want your red fraction circle. And you're going to place a purple fraction circle on the red circle. So just one of these, okay? Just one. And then the question is, how many purples do you need to cover that whole circle? Okay, well, if you started with this one and counted around, you would count 10 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around. Okay? So what fraction then of the circle is just one of these pieces? If there's one piece out of 10, then we would have 1/10. Okay? Oops, that's just repeating itself. I didn't mean for it to do that. 1/10, right? That's one piece would be 1/10. Now, this is the new learning, guys, so really listen. 1/10 fraction can also be written like this as a decimal. You have a 0 because there's no whole pieces, and you have one piece of that fraction. Okay? And you can even write it out like this, 1/10. And that's actually how you pronounce this, 1/10. Now, some people will say 0.1, but the correct math term is 1/10. Okay? So 1/10 and 1/10 is the exact same thing. All right? And what does this actually mean? Well, if we take a whole and we add, where'd it go? It's supposed to add one whole piece to it. I don't know where that little square guy is, or that little triangle. But if we had one little purple triangle, that would have been your 1/10. Okay? So there's that. Let's look at this fraction. We got 3 and 1/10. Remember we talked about this decimal points when we say the word and. So what does that mean? Well, we have 3 holes, right? So we have our 3 red holes. And then we have a fourth one with one fraction piece on it. Okay? So this is a picture, 3 holes and 1/10 of another hole. You would write that as a decimal as 3 and 1/10. Okay, how about this one? 13 and 1/10. Again, 13 holes. So we have all these red circles. We borrowed one from 13 classmates. This is what we'd have. And then we have a 14th one, but only one piece of it's covered. So we have 13 and 1/10. Okay? Now, why do we call it the tenths? Well, if we look at the number 13, 3 here is in the ones place, right? And this 1 is in the tens place, right? Because these are our whole numbers. But once you get to your decimal and you start going to the right, now we have our tenths. Tenths. It's very important. It's not your tens place. Your tens place is over here. Your tenths with your THS will come after your decimal point. Okay? All right. Look at those coins. Which one of these coins shows 1/10? Did you say the dime? Hope so. There's 10 dimes that will equal $1. One of them is 1/10 of a dollar, right? 1/10 or 1/10 means the same thing. Okay, so We can do the same thing with other fractions, guys. If we wanted to show 2/10 of a red circle, well, we would show two fraction pieces, right? What fraction of the red circle are 2? 2 out of the 10. Or as a decimal, 2/10. If we wanted to write it out, it would say 2/10. And we can do these with more and more, right? 3/10 is the same thing as 3/10. Written out says 3/10. Let's do 4. There's 4 fraction pieces. Oops, that should have said a 4 right there. We have 4/10, 4/10, and 4/10. All of these are different ways to show 4/10. They are all the same thing. Okay, let's look at this one. First of all, how would you read those decimals? Well, this one would be read as 3/10, and this one's 8/10, right? Now, which one's greater? Well, let's look at it. If 3/10 would just be 3 little fraction pieces, and 8/10 is 8 out of the 10, then we know that 3/10 is less than 8/10. So my question, which is greater? 8/10. Try this one. Which one's greater here? We have 1 whole and 2/10. 1 whole and 2/10. And then on this side, we have just 9/10. Okay, right here. So which one's more? The 1 and 2/10. Ooh, try this one. Which one's less? 0 or 1/10? Well, 0 is just 0. 1/10 is going to have at least one fraction piece on there. So which one's less? Is that right? That should be flipped around because 0 is nothing. So it can't be more than, right? So 0 is less than 1/10. Even though it's a tiny bit, it's still more, okay? All right, so today, talking about comparing decimals to the tenths place. This is what you're going to work on. Page 89, okay? Page 89 in your math journal. Now, before you get it out, you can kind of look at mine to see. On the first 3 problems, starts off pretty simple, right? We're going to write the fraction of what's covered here. So we know that we have 8/10 covered, and we write 8/10 like that. Number 2, we know that there's 5/10 colored, and we write our fraction as 5/10. Oh, but look at number 3. 1, 2, 3 pieces are colored, so 3/10? No, it's not 3/10 because we only have 5 pieces. So that's actually 3/5. But when we're talking about the decimals, we don't have a 5 place, right? We only have a tenths. So we're going to have to turn this into a tenth on the bottom, making it an equivalent fraction. So let's try that. 3/5. We're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 2. It's going to give me 6/10. Now that I have a 10 down here, I can write a decimal, and it would be 6/10. Okay, guys, you're going to go ahead and finish the rest of this page. Numbers 4, 5, and 6. Color part of each circle to show this decimal, then name the fraction. So 1/10 would be 1 piece colored in here, and it would be 1 out of 10, right? And down here, we're just doing these more than, equal to, or less than signs. Okay, if you need help, let someone know that's in the room, guys. Good luck.